This is a recording of the Chronicles of Clint Stone, Book 1, Undone, by some guy named Ted.
As a rule, it's usually a bad idea to double-cross anyone, but Clint Stone is not just anyone. The Diumph gang learned that the hard way that you don't betray the war fist. When you are on the run from slavers and all you have is a stolen ship, you don't have a lot of options. Clint and I were dirt poor and we needed money fast. One quick discussion in a dimly lit alley turned into a contract with one of the more unsavory elements of society. The Diumph gang on Graggle was one of the most vicious and notorious gangs for hire in that part of the galaxy. They did everything from assassinations to kidnapping, but they had yet to steal a few million marks from the Srun Bank, the financial arm of the Srun Empire, otherwise known as the guys who ran everything in this half of the galaxy. Naturally, it was Clint who gave them that opportunity. He planned everything, and he provided most of the muscle and resources. All he really needed the gang for was a distraction, and they were good at that. The hallway was deserted, stretching 50 feet in either direction. Usually, this hallway was full of guards, but they had been all drawn off by several strategically planned explosions and plasma shots. Set in the center of a flat metal expanse, the vault door was an impressive sight. 8 feet tall, 10 feet wide, and 4 feet thick. The door was constructed of a titanium and graphene alloy, one of the strongest materials in the galaxy. Even a direct hit from a nuclear weapon couldn't destroy it. The wall around it, sure, but the door would remain intact. Clint was currently standing next to the door, at its weak point, the control panel. I stood next to him, giving him tools as he needed them. He had hooked up some ridiculous-looking machine to the panel and was trying to hack to the most secure system in the universe. The Srun were well known for their love of money and were equally known for their ability to protect it. He would fail, of course. No one had ever succeeded, though hundreds had tried.
"You will fail. Door not open,"
said the last member of our little group in the hallway. Diumph, leader of the Diumph gang, stood behind me, his arms crossed. Diumph was an Yuan, one of the blue-skinned beings with only one eye. He had insisted on coming with us to the vault while his gang dealt with the guards.
"Give it time. It's not like I'm just picking a lock. This is delicate work here,"
said Clint in an exasperated voice. Diumph had said similar things for the last 3 minutes, as Clint worked on the door.
"You fail. We jailed. I not going jail."
"Be patient," snapped Clint.
"I go. Too long."
He turned to leave. Ding! The door slid open. Diumph and I stared in amazement. Clint Stone had done the impossible. I had seen him rebuild a ship that could nearly break light speed out of warp, but that was nothing compared to this. This was the equivalent of making a ship that could jump from one end of the universe to the other in a single second. Clint looked at the Yuan with a flat look and then strode on in. We filed in after him. The room was enormous, hundreds of feet in either direction, and everywhere I looked there were shelves, piled high with bars of gold. Jewels winked among the gold, and priceless works of art lined the walls. But it was the gold that was truly impressive. There was enough here to feed the galaxy for decades. And that was just one of hundreds of vaults the Empire had stashed away throughout the multitude of systems it controlled.
"Well, don't just stand there gaping at it. Load some of it up,"
Clint said, breaking us out of our awe-struck stillness. He threw bags at us. I caught one and finally went to the nearest shelf. I started to shove gold into the bag. It grew very heavy, very quickly. Finally, I could not fit any more in the bag, and I turned to Clint. He was already standing there, 2 bulging bags slung under his shoulders. The Yuan had a bag as well. Struggling under the weight of my bag, I followed him out of the vault door. We hurried down the hallway to the back room. The guard should be held up another few minutes, but it never hurt to be ahead of schedule. Bursting through the door into the back alley, the 3 of us jumped in a waiting transport.
"Drive,"
ordered Clint. The car shot forward and we were off, mixing in with the evening traffic. The driver weaved between the other transports and made it down the main road a couple miles before turning off into the warehouse district, where we would meet up with the rest of the gang and split the riches. A particularly run-down warehouse appeared before us, wide doors hanging open, and the driver pulled inside. The doors shut behind us, and the transport coasted to a stop. Clint opened the door, and we spilled out. That transport had not been designed with someone the size of Clint in mind, and it had been rather cramped. Heaving my bag on my shoulder, I made my way up the broad table in the middle of the cavernous room. With a grunt, I deposited my load. The bag slumped when I slid it down, and gold spilled out. Clint and Diunf set theirs on the table as well. We emptied them out and started to count the contents. That took a while. In the end, we had over 100 gold bars sitting on the table before us. Clint began to separate them into piles. During the time he had been counting, the rest of the Diunf gang had arrived. 18 of the most cutthroat, merciless, and sadistic killers on the planet, each with over a dozen scalps on his belt. They stood around the table in a semicircle, in a manner I did not find comforting. They were like, "Error, idiom does not translate. Closest substitute, sharks circling, waiting for the time to strike." Clint did not seem to notice. He continued to separate the bars into piles, 2 to us for every bar to the Diunf gang. He finished. In our pile, there were 68 bars of gold. In theirs were 34. Either pile was enough to make man rich for the rest of his life. Clint packed them into bags and slid one across the table to Diunf.
"There you go,"
said Clint.
"Your payment. 1/3 of the haul, as agreed upon." "See, have problem. Want more,"
said Diunf. His eye glinted with greed.
"More us, more gold."
Clint shook his head.
"We agreed on 1/3. That's what you'll get."
"No, we get all."
The Yuan's voice had a dangerous tone to it, and I could see the rest of the gang drawing closer. In their hands were clutched various knives and pistols. Each of their faces was twisted in a wicked smile. They looked like they were going to enjoy killing us.
"I'm curious as to how you think you're going to get it,"
said Clint, with an even more dangerous tone to his voice. The gang had not been around Clint long enough to realize the tone meant he was about to get very violent very quickly.
"It's simple. We kill you, we get gold."
"I don't see how you're going to get it from me. I'm certainly not going to give it to you."
His voice dropped dangerously low.
"And you don't have enough men to take me on."
Diunf looked baffled. Here was a single being, albeit a very large being, saying that 19 men were not enough to kill him. This had to be a joke.
"Ha, good joke. Now give money."
"Come and get it."
Clint backed up from the table, gold bags held in his hands. I backed up as well, keeping Clint between the killers and me. He rolled his shoulders and squared his feet.
"I'm ready."
Diunf nodded at 2 of his gang, and they stalked forward, knives held high. They approached Clint slowly, but with precision, one to either side, trying to outflank him. They assumed that he was weighted down by the gold in his hands, and they struck in unison, each to a side. Without blinking, Clint swung the heavy bags of gold up from the ground and sent them crashing into his attacker's jaws. I saw teeth fly at the impact, and their heads snapped backwards, taking their spines with them. Before the other had time to react what had just been done, Clint leapt at them, knives appearing in his hands. The 2 nearest gang members, big brutes each holding a rather large pistol, dropped, blood spurting from their chests. 4 enemies dropped in as many seconds, and Clint was just getting warmed up. I backed up further until I was as far away from the fight as I could get. I was not a fighter. I preferred to run, as it gave you more of a chance you would go on living. The rest of the gang finally processed what had happened, and they swarmed the man of stone, knives flashing and guns aimed true. Those guns didn't help. They shot with skill and careful aim, but it didn't matter. Clint was too fast, ducking and dodging all attempts on his life. The knives left his hands and buried themselves deep in the chests of those holding a gun. 13 gang members were left standing in that cavernous room out of 19. In one mob, they charged him. Clint danced among them, wind between the branches. None of their blades could touch him, but his could touch them. There, in that run-down warehouse, raged a storm of flesh and blood and metal, swirling about each other in a mad frenzy. In the midst of that storm of violence and death stood a pillar of skill and grace, beautiful and deadly. To watch Clint fight is a unique experience. Every being has a calling. This is fact. For some, that calling is building. They build soaring structures and beautiful monuments. For others, it may be painting. With a single brush, they can bring beauty into the world, where before there had been none. For Clint, his calling was fighting. To watch him is to see the storm clouds swirling in the sky, great and terrible. To watch him is to see the avalanche, unstoppable and charged with raw power. To watch him was to see the flooding river, relentless and vast. To watch Clint Stone fight was to see the supernova, full of brilliance and death. Those who stand in the way are obliterated. It was beautiful, it was terrible, and it was over. Clint stood among the pile of bodies, blood dripping from his hands and knives. He looked up at me and I saw blood splattered across his face. He took a deep breath and let it out in a sign of release.
Clearly, they weren't all their reputation said they were,
Clint said in a voice even and calm, despite having just killed 19 beings in a few minutes. He didn't even look like he had broken a sweat. He looked around the room, counting the bodies.
Hold on, there are only 18 here. Where'd the last one get to?
He asked, swinging his head around the room. I studied the bodies and realized which one was missing. The Unf got away, I told Clint. I glanced at the table and noticed that the bag of gold was gone as well. And he took a bag of gold.
So it's a hunt then. All right. If he wants to run, I'll chase him. He has what's mine, and I intend to get it back.
We followed that Yuan across 10 systems, always just on his heels. Eventually, we caught up to him on Bria and had to kill a dragon to get our gold back.
This has been a recording by Uncle Lyle for my fiancé and anyone who loves HFY. I hope you liked it, and remember to come back next time.